And hello, welcome to Bill Hitchcock Live. I am Bill Hitchcock. We're here on YouTube Live, and we have the link over on Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, go make sure you're clicking all the right things that click at YouTube, that you like what you're watching. We have got another power-packed program for you. I'm trying to squeeze too much in a very short period of time. A lot of ground to cover. Some of you might have saw the promo that we ran yesterday about, let me mash some buttons here, about we have got some fascinating studies to get out to you. One of them is from the FDA, the actual Food and Drug Administration study on the vaccine. They tried the vaccine on 40,000 people, and we got these results. We found out what happened, what the adverse reactions were. You might be surprised what did and did not happen. And I know there's been a lot of things going around the interwebs about certain, Bell's palsy, and everybody, don't take the vaccine. Well, we'll talk about that. Also, there's a study that I'm real excited to talk about. It's a mortality study where basically what happened is this group accessed existing information on Medicare patients. And this is really a real smart way to do things. There's a lot of information out there. You don't always have to recreate a study to get information. A lot of times that information is already there, but over 500,000, over 500,000 people, Medicare folks, information was examined to find out who was catching COVID and why. Again, you're going to be very, very surprised as to what race is most prone to catch COVID, also what pre-existing condition exists, comorbidities that people catch. It's fascinating stuff. A lot of ground to cover. And something else, I just love the news, sarcasm, that what they don't report. One of the other areas that we're going to be talking about a little later on in today's program is the UN, the United Nations. They released basically we'll call it a letter last June, July, warning governments and officials, police departments and all, do not abuse your power. They talk about the rule of law. And this came out 6 months ago. And I don't know where you live. I'm here in North Carolina. We can't be outside from 10 o'clock at night to 5 in the morning, according to our governor. We've heard about the horrible restrictions in New York and in California. And isn't it interesting how those laws get broken by the very people who do the executive orders? Can't eat outside, can't go to dining, and you get caught dining the next day. So anyway, we got a whole lot of ground to cover. But because it is Christmas, Merry Christmas, this just absolutely tickles me. There was a letter, where was that? In Minnesota. One letter sent to one house, and it makes national news. We find out a couple of days later this letter was actually sent to more than one house. But I want to go into this letter because it typifies the society of today, the left of today, and is something that we're going to talk about, the Freedom from Religion organization, because it's a tactic that they pull. But let's get into this letter. I've been waiting to get into this. This letter was sent to a home. Matter of fact, let me show you the home. That's the home. Okay? See that Christmas display there? Nothing that I would really consider unusual. Here's the letter that was sent anonymously to that home. The letter starts off with, "I couldn't help but notice your Christmas light display. During these unprecedented times, we have all experienced challenges which casual words just don't describe what we're feeling. The idea of twinkling, colorful lights are a reminder of the divisions that continue to run through our society." Twinkling lights. That's the reminder for this person that wrote the letter of the divisions that continue to run through our society, a reminder of systemic biases against our neighbors who don't celebrate Christmas or who can't afford to put up lights of their own. I think maybe we touched on the problem. Somebody can't afford a few twinkling lights, so they're real mad at their neighbors who can. It's twinkling lights. And this person, for some reason I keep saying woman. I have this feeling that a female, you're misogynistic here, Bill. No, I just have this feeling that this was written by a female. And systemic biases, twinkling lights. The divisions that run through this country, it's twinkling Christmas lights. The letter goes on, and again, this is anonymous. They did not identify, listen, anybody who doesn't identify themselves, you're invalid. You're completely invalid in my book. There's just there's no further discussion. But this person goes on and says, we must do the work of educating ourselves about the harmful impact an outward-facing display like yours has, twinkling lights. And I love we must do the work of educating ourselves. What this person is saying is, I'm educated, you're not. You need to educate yourself about twinkling lights. It's the root of all evil of racism and division and divide and politics. Twinkling lights. I wonder what she does when she blinks. Anyway, let's get back to the letter. This is so stupid. We must do the work of educating ourselves about the harmful impact an outward-facing display like yours can have. I challenge you to respect the dignity of all people while striving to learn. There we go again. You need to learn because I already know. Striving to learn from differences, ideas, and opinions of our neighbors. It's twinkling lights. We must come together collectively and challenge these She's saying you need to be open-minded. Well, why isn't she? See, the problem with the left and their open-mindedness is their brain falls out. That's what happens when you're just open-minded. Common sense is gone. Let me finish up this letter. Again, look, this is this person, I'm sorry, I keep saying she. This is what the person is bellyaching about. The twinkling lights on that house has set this person off to all sorts of areas of hate and divide and division in this country and other people, and they can't afford lights and they might not be a Christian and whatever mess it is that they got up their sleeve. Back to the letter, let's finish it off. We must come together collectively and challenge these institutional inequities. That's twinkling lights. St. Anthony is a community welcoming of all people, and we must demand better of ourselves. That's probably the funniest thing to me. Living in a community called St. Anthony, that's a Christian name, don't you think? Celebrating a Christian holiday and tradition and the birth of our Savior in a Christian place, in a traditional Christian 19th, 20th, and 21st century manner with twinkling lights. Now, here's one point I wanted to bring up. I made mention about the Freedom from Religion organization. This organization, what they do is they go around the country and usually pick on small towns that have forever and ever, since day one, will do things like maybe open up a meeting, a town hall meeting, with a prayer. Something that was always done, blah, blah, blah. What happens is the Freedom from Religion will show up on their doorstep and say, we got a, singular, anonymous letter protesting your prayer at a town council meeting. They're right now protesting the fact in Oklahoma, the governor of Oklahoma, because of COVID, wanted to have a day of prayer and fasting. Freedom from Religion, which they, not open-minded because their brain falls out, but free thinkers, that's it. Free thinkers, Freedom from Religion, call themselves free thinkers. Well, if they're free thinkers, why is their mind closed to religion? specifically Christianity. You can't be a free thinker. It's like part truth. There is no part truth. There's just truth. There's reality. There's nothing else. So this is the exact tactic. One letter, anonymous, in this case made national news the next day. This is the tactic that the Freedom from Religion uses. One letter from someone anonymous. And how do you defend that? You don't know who that person is. You don't even know if it's a real person. See the danger zone that this is? But I tell you what I'm going to do. In honor of this person that I think is a woman in Minnesota, in her anonymous letter about the twinkling lights that set her off, that creates all of divisions on world problems, and we're going to melt and it's terrible. Twinkling lights. In honor of our friend, there. Oh, holy night with the blinking lights. This is for you. This is what is setting off all the racial turmoil and tensions in the world. Blinking lights. See what happens? See what happens when you do stupid stuff. Now I got to press this button a whole bunch of times because you don't want to see that all day long. It's twinkling lights. Praise the Lord, our Savior born. December 25th. No, seriously doubt Jesus was born on December 25th, but that's okay. As a matter of fact, there's a hypothesis of 144 dates. But anyway, we're not going to worry about that. Let's move forward. I don't know if you saw this or not. Time Magazine 2020, the worst year ever. How depressing. Or maybe like this, the New Yorker. Look at that line, endless line of people that are social distancing from 6 feet away with their heads down and wearing a mask, and they're probably in a food line or a vaccination line or a free money giveaway line, and life is terrible and bad. Are you sick of the news? Well, there's a reason why, by the way. Let's see. This study. Why is all COVID-19 news bad news? This is a brilliant paper. It's a working paper. It's from the National Bureau of Economic Research in Cambridge, Mass. And it is just, bland as can be. So I'm going to go over some highlights on this. Because, let me get out of this. Hopefully I'll get out of this. There we go. There we go. There's a reason why our suspicion level of things like the vaccine is very high. There's a reason why there's a resistance to wearing a mask. There's a reason why people aren't always social distancing. There's a reason why the desire for lockdowns, staying shut up at home, has just gone out the window. There's a reason why. Most people get their information from news. Unfortunately, it's not information, it's news. What we need to do is take the next step. Once you hear about something, go investigate it. Not only that, just do research and don't research news outlets. Whatever you do, don't research news outlets. Most people, I went to CBS and ABC and MSNBC, and they all said the same thing. Well, I imagine so. But this death and grief and depression and all, listen to this study. What they did is they investigated the group, the National Bureau of Economic Research. They went on and investigated folks like Newsweek, the New York Post, the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, Politico, The Hill, the New York Times, and also television networks such as ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. They went and investigated them, as well as they investigated scientific and medical journals. They investigated folks like the JAMA, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, Nature. They went and analyzed from January 1st to July 31st, 23,500 news pieces, whether it was print or whether it was electronic, whether it was the mainstream media. Basically what they were trying to do is they hit the top main media, is the MSM, mainstream media that we all talk about. This is what they found out. Wondering why you're so depressed? Because most people get their information from the news. Well, this is what they found out. They say, and I quote, the most striking fact is that 91% of the U.S. stories, United States stories, are classified as negative, whereas only 54% of the non-U.S. stories are classified as negative. 90% of school reopening articles from the mainstream media here in America, negative. It's only 56% with other English-speaking countries. And finally, when it comes to the vaccine, 45% chance that it's a negative. Major media are 45 percentage points more likely to be negative relative to stories than in the non-U.S. Countries. Why is that? Well, we'll get into that. Here's the important part from the study. They say the tone of media coverage impacts both human health and attitudes towards preventative measures, including vaccination, mask wearing, and social distancing. They studied it. They found out it's true. Negative news gives you a negative opinion about things that are supposed to help us. They go on to say that the proportion of U.S. adults who exhibit depression symptoms has risen threefold since the start of the pandemic. Depression up 3 times. Why? 91% of the news, quote, and information that people get is negative. You're going to die. You're going to find out you're not. Let's see. In discussing this increase in mental health problems, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend against heavy consumption of news stories. Oh, boy. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Don't watch the news. It's destroying your mental health. Now, I'm not really going to get into agenda or purpose, but a lot of cases, but there is something that we have to understand. As the study finds out, it's actually twisted. People like negative news. They tune in to negative news. They read the article that's negative news. I'm going to give you, let me see, get rid of those paperworks. See if I still got this pulled up. I'm going to show you something. This is December 11th, when we're doing this live. I'm just going to go to one news outlet called The Drudge Report. Look at their headline on December 11th. Military-grade camera shows risk of airborne spread. Video, Americans can get stern holiday warning. No Christmas parties. New forecast, 362,000 fatalities by January 2nd. 200 hospitals at full capacity. A third almost out of ICU space. 9/11 system on brink. What if call nobody comes? Fox News anchor blows up when pundit calls out lack of death coverage. Oh, yeah, we need more death coverage. Virginia to institute night curfew. I just told you here in North Carolina, our fine governor instituted one. Can't be out from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Guess what? That's when the least amount of people are. Wouldn't that be most logical, the best time to be out and about? Grief will weigh on American psyche for years to come. That is pretty indicative of the news coverage here in America. Leave America, and you're looking in the 50 percentile in other English, Canada, across the pond, UK. So it's almost double here in the U. Even as this study found out, even when the news is good, when there's like some positive things about the vaccinations coming out, hey, looks like it's going to happen. comes out negative, oh, the vaccination, you're going to die. Your psyche, your mindset's going to be screwed for the next 5 years. That's the news. And you're wondering why you have doubts from authorities. Well, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, it didn't help when the U.S. Surgeon General came out in February and said, oh, you don't know, don't wear masks, don't wear masks, da, da, da. And then in April, first said, oh, wear masks, wear masks. So they're, our fearless leaders are contradicting themselves. But I want to leave with a study. They concluded, well, let me read what they say. So we conclude that the CDC's implicit warning label against consuming too much U.S. COVID-19 media may be warranted. That's not a joke. These folks, the folks, National Bureau of Economic Research, are serious of having the CDC asking them or suggesting or getting them or encouraging them to put a warning label before the news because it is so negative, so depressing, and it is affecting the health of us here in the United States of America. This is not happening anywhere else in the world, in English-speaking countries, like it is here. Now, we can get, like I said, I'm not really going to get into agenda of that type of thing, but let's look at positive. Let's look. I'm going to make so many people mad with what I'm about to show you, but it is fact, it is reality, and you don't hear it on the mainstream media. You don't hear it. You don't hear anybody talking about it. As of December 7th, here in America, we had 14,462,527 cases of coronavirus, 280,135 deaths. Now, before I proceed on, one death is too many. I am not belittling any sickness, any death. All of it, I wish it was gone. Unfortunately, we're living fallen society. Man fell, so we have diseases, we have problems, we have adverse situations. That's life. Until we die and go to heaven and made pure. That's life. But let's get back into this. The survival rate is 99.8%. So if you get coronavirus, you're going to get better. You're going to get well, and you have a 0.2% chance of dying. And those are pretty good odds. You know what? I bet if you looked up odds like crossing the street, they're worse. But look at this, where it says the flu. This is from the CDC. All this information is from the Center of Disease Control. But this is from the flu season of 2017-2018. 2 years ago, there were 45 million cases of the flu. Now, this is not coronavirus. This is the flu, influenza. 45 million cases of the flu. Did you hear about that in the news? No. 45 million people had the flu. Almost 900,000 were hospitalized. Just 1 year, 2017 to 2018, during that flu season. 61,000 deaths just from the ordinary seasonal flu. And the survival rate is basically statistically the same as the coronavirus. Doesn't that sound like good news? I mean, it's horrible that 45 million people had the flu 2 years ago. It's horrible that 60,000 of them died. It's horrible that over 14 million people have coronavirus. It's horrible that 280,000 of them died. But the survival rate is 99.8%. I love the comment I got not too long ago. Somebody said, well, 100% of the deaths, people died, and something silly like that. And I said, well, 100% of the survivors survived. You can get real good. But I'll tell you right now, I just made somebody mad. Because why? What did we just talk about that we just learned from the study? The general public like negative news. Their bad news sells. If it bleeds, it leads. So for me to come out here and show those numbers and show a survival rate of 99.8%, that goes against the grain of someone who likes negative news. Truth, fact, and reality, what a concept. But you know what? There's another problem. that we need to discuss. Because of the attitudes that have been formed by the mainstream media of being anti-vaccination, anti-mask, anti-social distancing, anti-lockdowns. And by the way, some of the things like lockdowns, I talked about this in the last show. The World Health Organization go, no lockdowns. The World Bank, no lockdowns. For several reasons, one of which is the economic strain, not only on countries, but the people who are most affected are the poor. We're going to be talking about that a little later on. Millions of people around the world are starving. They are left out, hung out to dry because of lockdowns. And like I said, we'll get into that in just a second. But let me show you this. First in line for COVID vaccine, some U.S. healthcare workers say no. Uh-oh. Healthcare workers, they're afraid of the vaccine. Such reservations are common among the 20 million healthcare workers in the United States, the country hardest hit by the pandemic with more than whatever. And Marcus Placia, chief medical examiner of the Association of State Territorial Health Officials. There are a lot of people who feel we don't have enough data yet. Well, guess what? It isn't just the healthcare workers that are going, oh, I don't want to do the vaccine. Look at that. Firemen. 55% of the firemen in New York, I don't want to take, no. And all I can say is that it's directly attributable to the bad news. Always bad news. It scared the living crap out of you. Again, I talked about this on the last show. We talked about fomites, which is the funk that comes out of you when you sneeze or cough and talk and all, that within those fomites is the coronavirus, that there's basically two different types. There's what they call droplets, which are 5 microns or bigger, heavier, or aerosols, which is 5 microns or less. New England Journal of Medicine, everybody talk very clear. If you're in a well-ventilated room, if you got that 6 feet away, actually studies are done at 1 meter, but they expanded it out for safety's sake to 6 feet. You're in a well-ventilated room, you're staying away from somebody, that the droplets are going to go away in 30 seconds. They're going to hit the ground in a well-ventilated area. You know, I told a story, but I saw a guy walking on the beach all by himself, 2 miles that way, 2 miles that way, no one. There was me off in the dunes, and I see this one guy walking on the surf with a mask on. He's by himself. You don't have to walk circles around. Wear a mask. Wear it properly. Most people don't. All these things, you'll be fine. There's no need for these lockdowns, shutdowns, and shut-ins. It's detrimental, and there's no need for the negative news, but I'm going off on a tangent here. I want to read you this. It's from an organization. It's a global data intelligence organization called Morning Consult. This just came out December 6th. Again, we're doing this on, I keep forgetting today's date, on December 11th, 2020. They found that 2 in 5 adults say the coronavirus is a severe health risk in their community, an increase of 10 percentage points. Well, deaths are rising. It's flu season now, people. You should anticipate more and more people getting sick. But here's something most fascinating. Last March, I started writing articles about show me your politics, and I'll tell you your stance on the coronavirus. And I got really strange reactions from people when I started talking about that. And again, the people who like bad news or on one side of the political spectrum or the other, they get all bowed up. But they found that 29% of Republicans say that the coronavirus is a severe health risk, but 55% of Democrats say it is. So it's more than double. Great disparity between Republicans and Democrats in regards to their mindset of what they think about the coronavirus if it's a severe health problem. It goes on to say that Americans are now more likely to say they'd seek a coronavirus vaccine than any other time. Well, guess what? Democrats, 66% of the Democrats, yeah, I'm going to go get a vaccine. 45% of the Republicans say they will. Again, 21% difference. That's huge. Show me your politics, and I'll tell you your thoughts and opinions on the coronavirus. I want to skip on over to a Harris poll here. got a lot of polling information, which I think is very valid and really needs to be talked about. This Harris poll basically says, well, not basically, it does say 63% say they are worried about unknown side effects of the vaccine. 43% say they do not trust the vaccine to prevent them from getting COVID. And 19% said, I ain't gonna take it. A little bit more polling. This comes from Gallup. Let me get this up here. I got too many buttons to push at one time. Here we go. Gallup polling. Willingness to be vaccinated for COVID-19. Last July, 66% of the people said, yeah, give me that there vaccine. Well, guess what? By the end of September, that dropped down to 50%. Why? There's only one reason why. Where people get their quote-unquote information. And I hope I'm being very clear about this. People get their information from the news. No, it's not information, it's news. Please also keep in mind the number one purpose and goal of a news organization is not to inform you, it's to make money. If it bleeds, it leads. Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. Bad news sells. We just found out that, bad news does sell because the populace is attracted to bad news. So if you're watching, I don't care if it's MSNBC or Fox, I'm trying to think of the most, or CNN, I'm trying to think of news organizations that are left and right. If you're watching them for your information, you're ill-informed. You're ill-informed. You're reading the wind, getting blown hither and thither, as the Bible talks about. In all, what we really have to do, if you walk away or after watching this, if you'll just do this one thing, investigate things on your own accord. Information's out there, not news organizations. Don't do that. What a news organization is good for is like if a bomb goes off somewhere, someone gets elected, something, an earthquake somewhere, you know of an event. Once you find out about that event, just push the news organization aside and start investigating it on your own. That's the best way. And the other thing that I did for years in having to do news and commentary is that I will just trip the light fantastics. I'll go to 20, 30 different news organizations on one topic to see what they're all saying. And out of that huge diversity, and it has to be diverse, go to Pravda, the Russian, the Soviets, read their stuff. Go to the BBC, read their stuff. Go to India, read their stuff. Canada, read their stuff. And out of all that, you start seeing what is and what is not. I call it vectoring. But you got to have a whole lot of news sources to do that. Let me go on into this next graph from Gallup. Americans less likely than in the spring to shelter in place. Look at that. At around April 1st average, 67% of the people say, yeah, I'll lock down, shut up, stay at the house. 67%. Well, by November 1st, that fell down to 49%. That would say, yes, I will do it. Everybody else is iffy, sketchy. So again, and the other thing is that we're just worn down. It was just worn down. Normally you have a flu season, it comes and it goes. And by the way, as a heads up, we're transitioning into season 2 of the coronavirus. So when you start looking at these numbers, we're adding a couple of seasons together. You know, if we did that with flu, like the CDC says that up to 960,000 Americans a year get the flu. How would you like it if we started combining years together and you're going to 1.5 million people? So we have to be very careful. Now, this is what most people wanted to find out about. This is what, if I can, again, press the right button here. Here we go. The Food and Drug Administration, the report's called Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee meeting, December 10th. That was yesterday. FDA briefing document. I got my hands on that document. This is where the FDA took 40,000 people and they took the vaccine and went, thoo-hoo, gave it to them. And it's over a 3-week period. You get first one, and then 3 weeks later, you get the second one. And they wanted to see what would happen. But they were, obviously, I mean, this is the FDA. They know what they're doing. What they did is they did a double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial. And what double-blinded means is that the participants, the recipients of the vaccine, didn't know if they were getting the vaccine or the placebo. Also, the people administering the vaccine and the placebo didn't know which one they were giving. So there could be no cheating or biases or anything because the people giving the placebo or the vaccine and the people receiving it had no clue which was which. And again, it was 44,000 people. Let's see. And also, they made sure that none of the participants showed any signs of having COVID before this trial happened. This was done, it says, in mid-November. This is from the executive summary from the FDA report. It says, in a mid-November analysis of 36,621 participants found that efficacy in preventing confirmed COVID-19 occurring at least 7 days after the second dose was at 95%. So again, dose 1, 3 weeks later, dose 2, they waited a week after that. They found that it was 95% effective. But what they also discovered is that 8 people that received the vaccination got sick with COVID. But 162 people who received the placebo got COVID. So, and we'll go further on. They said 2 months afterwards, they did a second, after the second dose, they had the same favorable profile out of 38,000 participants. So 2 months later, they had success. The most common, here are the most common adverse reactions to the, well, I've got a little pretty picture here to show you. Hang on a minute. Let's get that on up there. The most common adverse reactions, injection site reactions, 84.1%. Now, this is not 84.1% of all the 40,000. These percentages you're seeing are of the people who had an adverse reaction. This is what they experienced. Injection site reactions, fatigue, headache, muscle pain. That just sounds like the flu, doesn't it? Chills, joint pain, and fever. Those were the adverse reactions. Now, I don't know if you've heard about it, but I've seen on them interwebs, people were all concerned about a thing called Bell's palsy, saying people who take the vaccination, they're getting that Bell's palsy. No one knows what Bell's palsy is, but they're getting it, and that's a bad thing. Well, what happened? Let me see if I can write. The frequency of serious adverse events was low, less than 0.5%. Among non-serious, unsolicited adverse events, there was a numerical imbalance of 4. That's thumb surgery, so I'll hide it. 4 cases of Bell's palsy in the vaccine group, compared with no cases in the placebo group, though the 4 cases in the vaccine group do not represent a frequency above the expected in the general population. So again, we're looking at a overall 40,000, half 20,000, 4 people came up with Bell's palsy. Now, Bell's palsy, they don't know much about it, but basically half your face just kind of feels like it's sliding off, like you had go to the dentist and numbs your face up to operate on you and feels like it's sliding off. That's literally what happens, is that your eye on one side can't close, your skin and muscles droop on down. It's generally a temporary condition. The Mayo Clinic describes it as it's also known as acute peripheral facial palsy of unknown cause. Can occur at any age. The exact cause is unknown, but here's the key to it. It's believed to be the result of swelling and inflammation of the nerve that controls the muscles on one side of your face. Or it might be a reaction that occurs after a viral infection. Well, what do you think the vaccine is? That's basically they're introducing the funk into you so your body can build up the resilience to fight it off on its own. So that would make sense. But statistically, the FDA says that, that they would expect 4 in the general population to occur anyway. So they are not overly concerned about that. So that's the results of the FDA test. Is that it's 95% positive after a couple of months of injecting it. The worst problems seem to be a problem around the injection site. Only 4 people, and I know it's 4 people, I wouldn't want to be one of the 4, got Bell's palsy, but that's a temporary condition. And they believe, as the Mayo Clinic was talking about, it's a reaction to a virus. So that would make sense. Now, the other study, what do I want to show you here? The largest to date COVID mortality study. This one is what I'm most excited about getting out to you. This was done, a Dr. Marty McCary of Johns Hopkins interviewed Dr. Harlan Krumholtz from Yale University about something that he did, that Dr. Krumholtz did and his team, is they accessed available information with Medicare folks to find out. It was over 500. What was the number here? 534,023 Medicare beneficiaries, over 500,000 people on Medicare. They're being examined. They got results, and so they started studying the results. This is what they found out: who is most susceptible to COVID. Hispanic patients were at the highest risk in terms of the race with the highest risk, at 74% increased risk of mortality after adjusting for comorbidities. The Hispanic race, followed by the Asian race, with a 71% increased risk of mortality, followed by black patients. So it's Hispanics, followed up closely behind Asians, and then by blacks. Now, they did not give any percent number for blacks. They said the risk factor we identified in the Medicare population after adjusting for age and race is, guess what? Sickle cell disease. I don't know, I remember as a young man that used to hear a lot of television promos and commercials and all about sickle cell anemia. There was a lot of coverage back then, and for the past 40 years, I really haven't heard anything about sickle cell anemia. But it says right here that the Medicare population, after adjusting for age and race, is sickle cell disease, followed by chronic kidney disease, followed by leukemia and lymphomas, heart failure, diabetes, and lung cancer. And what I did find out is that sickle cell disease is, in people of African descent, is 1 in 12 carries sickle cell gene. That's a high number. But what I didn't know, that they said Hispanic Americans from Central and South America and people of Middle Eastern, Asian, Indian, and Mediterranean descent all have potential for being carriers that have the gene of sickle cell. But that was the number one thing. Hopefully that's useful information for you. They also found out that blindness, for example, was an independent risk factor, maybe because blindness tends to be associated with people with residential living. They're in those, like a retirement home type environment. One other final fascinating thing, we'll move forward. They say only 2,500 patients who have been without comorbidities died of COVID. Now, comorbidity means that you've got more than one pre-existing condition, but less than 3. If you have 3 or more, it's multiple morbidity. But comorbidity means you've got more than 1, less than 3, so 2. You've got 2 other problems going on. So of the 2,500 Medicare folks that were examined in this study that didn't have any other problems, that caught COVID, they died, but that number is so small. So if you don't have a pre-existing condition, it's the pre-existing conditions that get you. Here we find out Hispanics and sickle cell disease were key markers for that. So fascinating study. Now, I'm going to switch gears on you completely. Something that I made mention about earlier. This gentleman, Alexander Zoeff. He's with the UN Global Program Manager and Special Advisor on Prevention of Violent Extremism. He is the UN Assistant Secretary General for Rule of Law and Security Institutions. He wrote an article about rule of law. Is COVID and the Rule of Law a Dangerous Balancing Act? This guy's actually from, he's Russian, in charge of security. Good man to have. This is what he said. Let me just flip into this next chart. Pay close attention. Well, hang on a minute. A lot of governors, a lot of mayors across the United States are enacting all sorts of laws, rules, and regulations to prohibit us from doing, locking us down in our house, not allowing us to go to bars and restaurants and amusement parks and things like that. And of course, as I mentioned before, usually after they pass that edict, they get caught doing the exact same thing that their executive order said you can't do. In North Carolina, for instance, just our Governor Cooper just enacted today, as a matter of fact, goes into effect. If you're out after 10 o'clock and in between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., you get arrested, you get a ticket. No, you're supposed to stay home. Yeah, that ain't going to work out too good. Like in New York, they had I love this one. The mayor of New York instituted this hotline, this telephone number to call if you saw somebody breaking some COVID rule, not wearing a mask, not social distancing and all that. He got pranked. It got the telephone number got overloaded with prank phone calls, so they had to stop it. California, there's 30 million people that I'm aware of now that are under lockdown rules, and they vary depending on where you live. But we were being warned by the United Nations, by Alexander Zoeff, about the rule of law. Listen to this. This is from a letter that he wrote. He said, where governments respond with an expanded role and the forceful presence of police and other security actors, challenges can emerge, including perceptions of bias, disproportionate use of force, and other human rights issues. There is also a risk that some states may utilize emergency powers to consolidate executive authority at the expense of the rule of law, suppressing dissent and undermining democratic institutions, especially where courts and other oversight bodies struggle to perform due to COVID-related restrictions. Now, does that not sound familiar? And in one sense, I'm highly embarrassed that it's the United Nations last summer that came out with this, warning about the rule of law being infringed upon by our very officials who are supposed to uphold and protect the rule of law. Well, the guy is from Russia. He's, I can guarantee you he's used to the Soviet Union. He knows what that's all about. But let's continue on here. Later on in his letter, it says, it is my hope that the world leaders, as they discuss joint action to contain and overcome the pandemic, will consider the need to avoid enduring harm to rule of law principles and fundamental freedoms. This will help to avoid aggravating social tensions, grievances, and underlying causes of conflict. And preventing conflict is perhaps an imperative now more than ever. That last part, preventing conflict, is perhaps imperative now more than ever. That was written last summer. Here we are back in the flu season. The cases of COVID is going up. The deaths from COVID is going up. Restrictions from our elected types are getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And we're taking it. We're not questioning it. Is it legal? Can they do that? Do they have the authority? Where does their authority stop? I mean, can I be put in prison for not wearing a mask? You know, they're talking about in your house, in your backyard, telling you don't go see mom, pa, grandma, and grandpa during Christmas. Don't travel. And by the way, as we talked about and proved in the last show, guess where your greatest chance of getting sick is? It's not out and about. It's not casual contact. It's when you're locked up with someone who is sick, whether it's systematic or asymptomatic, which means either you have signs of being sick or you're not showing any signs at all. If you're in close quarters with them for 30 minutes or more, that's when you get sick. Now, where is that environment? The research shows it's not at work, it's not casual contact, it's at home. And where does our elected types want us to be locked up at? At home. Doesn't make sense. So I wanted to bring that up, that there are concerns of rule of law, and I am not hearing anybody talk about it. You know, I do not watch the mainstream media for various and different reasons, because it's not information, it's news. But we have a constitution, we have rights. Those rights protect us. Who do they protect us from? Basically the government. And to keep us all playing well with each other. I want to move forward. I'm running out of time here. This is, to me, I want to get into an area that I am most concerned about in regards to the COVID. While we're all being distracted by a virus, there's a bigger beast that is growing bigger and bigger every day. And how our elected types are treating COVID with lockdowns, shutdowns, stopping businesses and all, is making this beast just blow up. What beast? I'm talking about the economy. This country is so far in debt, and it's ballooning the debt, that next year the debt to GDP is going to be over 104%, and then exponentially grow after that each year. Listen to this from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is all due to COVID. In November 2020, 14.8 million persons reported that they had been unable to work because their employer closed or lost business due to the pandemic. That's almost 15 million people in November because of COVID shutdowns. Among those who reported in November that they were unable to work because of pandemic-related closures or lost business, 13.7% received at least some pay from their employer for hours not worked. So out of that 15 million people who lost their job, almost 14% of them got some kind of money from their employer. Don't fault the employer. He ain't got no money. His business just got shut down. He's got huge debt, I can tell you that. So of the 14% that got some money from the employer, yay. Now, well, the government's going to give them money. That's exactly why we have a problem. Government doesn't have a magic money tree that just pulls money off. They've been treating it like that. It's like in 2020, was it $6-7 trillion we just printed out of air and gave out in various and different forms, 4 different laws that were enacted in 2020. Let's continue on. The Bureau of Labor Statistics goes on and says about 3.9 million persons not in the labor force in November were prevented for looking for work because of the pandemic. That's almost 4 million people. So add that up, we got 19 million people in November alone jobless because of why? Because of COVID, shutdowns, lockups. We're not producing. If we're not producing, we can't live. The government doesn't produce. The government takes from people who do produce. So if you take away the producers, the government's not making money. Now, this is also very important. So now we got the unemployed. Feeding America. Shocking stuff. In 2018, 14.3 million American households were food insecure. And let me just kind of talk about that. Hello, that's not me. That's me. Food insecure means a household can't feed its family completely on any given day. They're going hungry. There's some food, but not enough food to feed everybody in the household on any given day. That's basically what food insecurity is. So 2 years ago, we had 14.3 million American households couldn't feed themselves. In 2019, that was 35 million. But due to the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, more than 50 million people may experience food insecurity in 2020 in America, including a potential 17 million children. Do you see what the effect is of shutdowns, lockdowns, businesses not allowed to operate? We can't make money. If we can't make money, we can't spend money. The government can't tax the money. We can't contribute back into society. The fear is that within 2 years, going from 14.3 million households who can't feed themselves, 2 years later, because of these shutdowns and the pandemic, 50 million people cannot feed themselves. Now let's expand upon that a little bit more. Let's see if I can mash the right button here. Oh, that's not the right button. There we go. World Health Organization in regards to hunger. Over 130 million more people will go into the chronic hunger world by 2020. That's 130 million more people because of COVID. Are you starting to see one of the beasties that is growing rampant right now? People are starving. The World Health Organization has been warning about this, and that's why they're against lockdowns, because we got to have people going out making money and producing for themselves and for other people and for other governments. Let me go into what do I want to go into? I don't have my, no, I don't have it. Well, I'm just going to have to read this one to you. Congressional Budget Office, this just came out a couple of days ago, projects that if current laws governing taxes and spending generally remain unchanged, federal debt held by the public would first exceed 100% of gross domestic product in 2021, next year, and reach 107% of GDP, its highest level in the nation's history. By 2023, debt would continue to increase in most years thereafter, reaching 100 debt compared to our gross national product, 195% by 2050. That means the country is making $1 but spending $2. By next year, the country will be making $1 but spending $1.07. This is worse than World War II, when we had that great debt because of World War II. This is the worst debt, and I truly apologize for not having that chart here to show you that after this year, the debt goes like this. It just shoots straight up. And I want you to think about something. Every single time you hear about a free giveaway program being offered by the president and the president to come, I'm going to give, it's money we don't have. You see, whenever they print money out of air, there's an interest rate. Do you realize that the two greatest debts that we have to pay in America, one is health care. Two is the debt on the money that we pulled out of the sky. Those are our two greatest debts. That's what's driving us into the toilet financially. And the moral of the story is this. The country collapses. There are no government programs. There are no government checks. There are no welfare programs. There are no Medicaid, Medicare. There are no nothing. So we better take care of this debt. We better take care, get people back to work and out of the house where it's healthiest, and back to work where they can earn some money to feed their own family. And in so doing, they're able to, because they're making money, to feed the world. The World Health Organization, 130 million more people around the world. 50 million people here in the United States can't feed the households. Families can't feed themselves. It's gone by 3 times in 2 years. Maybe even almost 4 times in 2 years. Why? Shutdowns, lockdowns, things of that nature. Folks, I'm going to go on and go. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to go on and transition something. I want to give the address out to you where you can write to me. Also, I have the phone number there. I did not take any phone calls today. Will later on in future webcasts. But I want you to go on and jot down this address. Atlantic Beach, P.O. Box 1012, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, 285, North Carolina, North Kakalaki, in case you're in the military. 28512, that's the studio line. I don't want you to call that when I'm not on the air because no one will answer it. But P.O. Box is Bill Hitchcock. Just send it to me. P.O. Box 1012, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, 28512. I hope you've enjoyed this program. It was power-packed, a lot of information. It's not always the most exciting or loving information that you want to hear, but it's factual information, and we need this to be able to make better decisions to move forward on treating ourselves, our families, and our loved ones when it comes to this COVID, when it comes to lockdowns, when it comes to helping other people out. If you know someone that needs food, give it to them. I understand people are now stealing food here in America. Stealing food. So anyway, this is Bill Hitchcock. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. If at Facebook, at YouTube, please click like. By the way, all the information that I talked about today will be at my personal website, BillHitchcockLive.com. BillHitchcockLive.com. Go to the blog section, and you'll see every link, every study that I've talked about, and then some. I didn't have time to cover it all. All right, enough of me. I will see you next time. God bless.